Hey, everybody. We are deep in October baseball at the moment. It is October 10th. Playoff baseball everywhere. We are on the verge of wrapping up the division series and jumping into the championship series here. A lot of action happening across the board, and really just wanted to get a chance to look back on it where we had. So, playoff baseball, October baseball is a tremendous spectacle that we all love, where the chaos is there, unheralded superstars, guys that kind of just rise to the occasion. And then also we look at the superstars on the rosters, who was holding up their end of the bargain, who was delivering in the clutch, who was showing up, whether it's on the mound or at the plate or defensively, to carry that team forward, to make that contribution, to earn that paycheck. Playoff baseball has been it's like playoffs in any sport, but there's always a mix of that superstar either choking or stepping up, and then that unheralded player who has kind of laid in the weeds or been injured or hadn't had the great regular season, and then they just get their moment, and the lights aren't too bright for them, and they shine. And we're going to dive into it right now. We're currently where we stand. We got a couple intriguing games, one later tonight between the Tigers and Mariners to decide the next in the ALCS based on the Blue Jays. And then on Saturday afternoon, on Saturday evening, Brewers Cubs I-94 rivalry, taking that thing back to American Family Field, and the winner will get to face the World Series champion Dodgers, spot on the line for another World Series bid. So a lot coming up, and we're going to really dive into it. Before we go any further, just want to welcome you all to another episode of the Power Alley Podcast. We're connected to Spinable Sports Network. You can find us on all podcast platforms, as well as the Spinable Sports YouTube channel. I'm Fresh. You can find me on Twitter/X via at SS_2Fresh. I'm also a contributor to SpinableSports.com, and the co-host of our flagship podcast, the Irrational Confidence Podcast. You can find that on Twitter/X at IR Confidence Pod. And if you're looking for the Power Alley Podcast on Twitter, at Power Alley Pod. And of course, the overall arching, the environment we're all in, we are part of the Spinable Sports Network. You can find them at Spinable Sports on Twitter/X and SpinableSports.com, as well as Spinable Sports YouTube channel. Before we dive into sort of playoff success, let's look at just some stats currently. So that we are recording this October 10th before Game 5 of the ALDS between the Tigers and Mariners. And there's obviously the Yankees are no longer in the playoffs. The Reds are out. The Guardians are out. But looking back at where we currently sit, Aaron Judge, most hits in the playoffs, AL and NL combined with 13. He's batting .500, 2 doubles, a home run, 7 RBIs, 4 walks, an OBP of .581, a slug of .692, and on-base percentage of 1.273. He has held up his end of the bargain. And I'll dive into the full line of Yankees later, but for someone who could probably pitch around, the Red Sox went at him, the Blue Jays went at him. He didn't hurt them too much, and obviously they are no longer in the playoff format. Right behind him, quietly, Nico Hoerner, 12 hits. A ton of those versus the Brewers. Absolutely been crushing Bruins pitching so far in the DIA and the NLDS series between the Brewers and the Cubs. Mookie Betts right there with 10. Javi Baez, welcome back. He had a great start to the year, kind of leveled off late, just like the Tigers did late in summer of the dog days. He has 9 hits, 1 double, 1 home run, 5 RBIs, 1 walk, OBP of .370, slug of .500, OPS of .870, and sitting .346. So he's showing up right now for the Tigers. If they can keep that going, him and Gleyber Torres and Riley Green, they're finally starting to get those bats going versus the Mariners. They had a lot of slow starts. They had a terrible end of the season. But tonight's going to be the real big challenge if they can get after it with Struble on the hill and take out the Mariners. Some other unheralded players, obviously Vlad's having a heck of a playoff. Ernie Clement of the Blue Jays having a great season so far. Dalton Varsho, great playoff so far. Kyle Tucker, a lot of injuries this year, pending free agency, sitting 304 in the playoffs. As a Brewers fan, I really hope he doesn't show up on Saturday and that just his season's over. He's a free agent and move on from there. But him getting kind of hot at the right time probably has Cubs fans very happy. If they can somehow pull it off and pull off the being down 0-2 to win 3 straight and go on and take the Dodgers. Having Kyle Tucker's bat and playoff experience will be something they could definitely need come crunch time. Jackson Chourio got off to a massive start for the Brewers in the first 2 games of the playoff series versus the Cubs. He's kind of still hitting at 7 hits, 467 average. That hamstring, though, still worrisome. He's not, if you watch the game, he's not trying to hustle and take the extra. He's not trying to beat out a play first. He's not trying to steal. So that, you kind of wonder, so toughing it out, if you're that 100% help, what else could he bring? But if he can deliver, you sort of win today and move on and see what happens later. But all in all, there's a lot of offense we're seeing. We'll talk about the Yankees more. That's a little bit different story. But you're sort of seeing the teams are rising up and they're playing when they have to play. We're getting some great playoff baseball, whether it was the Guardians and Tigers going at it, whether it is the Mariners and Tigers going at it, whether it was the Yankees, Red Sox. Now, even the Blue Jays, Yankees was a fun series. You sort of see Blue Jays pouring it on. Yankees kind of like, all right, we have to get ourselves off the mat. And then the pitching kind of failed them in game 4. Phillies, Dodgers was an amazing series. Reds, Dodgers, not so much. But playoff baseball, it just gets more intense and more intense. And one of my buddies is a big hockey fan. Kind of asked me a question on one of the playoff formats. Like, why is it a 3-game wild card, 5-game DLS Division Series, and then a 7-game championship series and a 7-game World Series? Like hockey, we do it straight 4 straight series of 7 games. Yeah, but hockey's playoffs are 2.5 months. October baseball, you have a month to complete all these series. If MLB wanted to go 4 7-game series, expand it out and have 8 teams in the East and 8 teams in the West, like the hockey, like the NHL does, the NBA does, of course you can start some playoffs. You can have it go October, November, but the World Series, if you play December 15th, there'll be snow all over the field. Each playoff system has it. They have their intensity, and you also can flip the script. Hockey might be a physical matchup, but they're only playing 82 games and they get a lot of off days. Baseball, you're playing 162 and then jumping into the playoff series. So in the end, it kind of evens itself out. It's all about perspective. There's a lot more off days in the hockey season than there is in the Major League Baseball season, and they play more games. So the playoff series kind of condense it into a month. It's a sprint. You ask the questions like, well, that's why it is. They're not just playing 7 games. If they wanted to make the money, they could, but we'd be playing the World Series on December 15th with snow on the ground somewhere, not American Family Field. The Brewers made it though, or LA. But Chicago, Wrigley Field, they'll be snowed out. RB, they're playing games at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Yankee Stadium, there'll be snow. Boston, there'll be snow. Toronto would be covered, so you could play a game there. Let's be logical. The weather would be, much more of a factor coming down the stretch if you had stretched out 4 7-game series and everybody making the playoffs. Outside of that, it's just, the playoffs have the ring streak. It's 9 innings, could be potentially more. One thing that we offer, we get so enamored with the ghost runner or the extra runner and extra innings at second base, or whatever you want to call it. The playoffs is not. It's true extra inning affairs. You can go all out. You have to win the ball game, full on, clean script. No extra, runner out there sitting there at second base in the 10th inning. And I think that's what also kind of dawned on people during game 4 of the Phillies Dodgers. Oh yeah, it's tied after 9. We're going clean baseball, real baseball. And obviously terrible outcome for the pitcher there, throwing the ball past the catcher at home and allowing the Dodgers to walk it off. But let's face it, the bases loaded. You might get 1 out, but how long are you going to hold the Dodgers back in that offense for putting 1 more run across and winning the ball game? So the poor guy's going to wear it. He owned it in the post-game press conference, Kettering. It was bound to happen. Pitching-wise, you're seeing the Brewers bullpen outside of game 4 versus the Cubs. They've been pretty good in the first 3, only allowing 1 run. It's the one challenge, though. There's the pitching formats in the playoffs is a lot different than the regular season. Regular season, you have your 5-man, maybe 6-man rotation. You try to get a guy to 6 or 7. You have some relief pitchers, and then you hold your 2 best for the 8th and 9th and kind of lock it down. In the playoffs, you're worried about today and today only. How can I get the win today? You're going to try to manage maybe 3 starting pitchers, and the rest of the guys are going to come out of the bullpen one way or another, long relief, short relief. Your closer might not be pitching the 9th. If you need to shut down an inning versus the best 3 batters coming up, the 8th or the 7th, you do it. Outs are crowd premium. You don't have tomorrow, we'll try to win the series, or we'll see what happens next week for somebody else. You have the here and now. So you have to who can come out there and just pitch and rock it in. So it's a lot of the line. You're going to see a lot of different scenarios, and I'll dive into how the Brewers and the Cubs are going to try to navigate game 5 back in Milwaukee. But it's something that you're kind of scratching your head like, why is so-and-so coming in the game? Or why is so-and-so only pitching here? They aren't the starter, but coming in the second inning. The Cubs with Matthew Boyd, he got rocked in game 1, but he only threw 30 pitches. Well, he was ready to go. In game 4, he dealt. Shota pitched a little bit more in game 2 for the Cubs. How much does he have in the tank for game 5? You can definitely see Devin pitched a lot in game 1. He only went 5 innings. There's a lot more stress than game 4. Strike zone was a little bit in question, and I'll dive into a little bit more as well because there was definitely some very egregious calls by the umpires so far in the playoffs. And it's another reason for ABS and those instant replays that's happened in the helmet coming into play real quickly. So first, let's just go into the playoff series. Obviously, Yankees took out the Red Sox. That's cute. Dodgers took out the Reds. Cubs did what they had to do versus the Padres. And shame on you, Padres. Look like a bunch of punks, and you're mouthing, and you get more talking in the dugout, talking on the field. Where was the talking on the field? You want to chirp to the umpires coming down. Yeah, they made some bad calls. They've been pretty bad in the playoffs so far, but let your bats do the talking. You guys were non-existent. Your offense was there, not there. Your defense was, and your pitching staff was, and you let the Cubs walk all over you. So how about you do you're talking with the bats instead of you talking with your lips, talking to you, Manny Machado, especially, and buck up. I really like the Guardians, honestly. Producer Drew and my co-host in the Irrational Confidence pod, Seth, they're both Cleveland fans. They're from outside Cleveland originally. Seeing the Guardians put on that run to get back into playoffs and win the division, but then losing the playoffs was a little heartbreaking. But you know what? They made a heck of a run. They were 15, 16, 17 games out in mid-August and charged back and win the division. Maybe they just ran out of gas, but it was definitely a great series going back and forth and a typical Michigan-Ohio battle going back and forth. Unfortunately, lately, the state of Michigan's been winning a lot of those Michigan-Ohio battles, but hey, every game's a different challenge. And then you kind of look at just where we are now. The Blue Jays had the number 1 seed in the American League. They got the AL. They won the tiebreaker on the last day of the season over the Yankees to get that bye. They go in and they put the boots to the Yankees. Their offense showed up, especially Vlad Guerrero Jr. Take down the series 3-1. You kind of saw it in game 2. They had a big lead. Yankees kind of swarmed back. It's like, all right, Yankees got some momentum. Game 4, game 3, Yankees take it. Game 4, the Blue Jays just like, all right, enough is enough, and they put it away. And that kind of leaves me, where do the Yankees go from here? Obviously, your best pitcher missed the entire season. Garrett Cole out, injury. We'll see how he recovers. He gets back into it next year and in some spring training in April, how he recovers. Is he fully ready to go? When is he fully ramped up? Max Fried and Carlos Rodon pitched okay. Guy is up and down throughout the entire year. But just, it's not like there was lacking something all season. The offense, as of today, October 10th, Cody Bellinger's opted out of his contract with the Yankees. He was tremendous. He showed 2018, 2019, Cody Bellinger with the Dodgers where he won an MVP. He was playing that kind of level this year for the Yankees. Losing that bat in the lineup's going to be tough because Goldschmidt has shown his age. Trent Grisham's a free agent. Stanton hit under 200 in the playoffs. Volpe's not the guy. Is Ryan McMahon really your third baseman? Jazz Chisholm hit under 200 in the playoffs. You have a couple of prospects, Jason Dominguez coming up, but where's that offense going to come from? You missed on Soto last year after you losing him to free agency. Where are the Yankees going to find that extra bat to help Judge and get this team fully locked in? Is Volpe the answer at shortstop? What do they do in this offseason? You have Luke Weaver and Devin Williams supposed to be free agents. I got a feeling Devin Williams will be gone, even though probably at a lesser buying rate than he probably figured since he came there. And he's pitching off of a pretty solid year with the Brewers and a pretty solid career with the Brewers. But they do have David Bednar and Camilo DeBoll back in the bullpen, as long as some other young, intriguing arms. But you have 2 or 3 guys in the bullpen there for the Yankees. You're going to need more than that lineup. That lineup just is, You kind of look in the postseason alone. Trent Grisham, Volpe, Stanton, Chisholm, all hit under 200. The Yankees as a team hit 251 with an OBP of 314, a slug of 379, and an on-base percentage of 693. That's not going to cut it. And we showed they beat a young and injury depleted Red Sox team in a 3-game series. Took 2 out of 3. Congratulations. But then when the Blue Jays came to town, they smacked them, and it just felt like there's an emptiness to that season for the Yankees. We technically tied the Blue Jays for the division. Where was it when it was needed down the stretch? We all thought back in March when they were playing the Brewers and they were just hitting home runs left and right in batting practice, like, oh, this team's ready to lock in. Hey, the special bats and all that fun stuff. And it kind of just wavered from there. It really didn't matter. And there's got to be some soul searching there for the Yankees because we're start asking the question: are they going to win a World Series with Aaron Judge? Are they wasting his time? Is somebody else going to step up on that franchise and help deliver? Because right now, time's slipping away. Yeah, and he's still young in terms of baseball, but the window at some point is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And you're going to have to start maximizing and find a way to get it done. If not, it's just going to be a wasted era in Yankee baseball. Mariners-Tigers Game 5. Struvel's on the bump. Tigers, can Riley Green show up? Can Baez show up? The Torkelson. That entire team, you have your chance. Go out there and get yourself to the AL Championship Series, take on the Blue Jays. This is a big time for Detroit. You got a resurgence last year. You're there. Give it everything you got. Hopefully that bullpen can fight. Hopefully the offense can get some support. Mariners on the other side. You have put together one special season. Cal Raleigh, tremendous. The entire offense is playing well. The pitching staff's really good. You cannot blow this opportunity. It is right there in front of you. Looking back, last World Series title for the 3 American League teams are still left. Blue Jays in 1993. Tigers in 1984. And they haven't been to the ALCS ALCS since appearing in 3 straight from 2011 to 2013. There's a long drought there for the Tigers. They've been to the ALCS, but it's been 12 years. They had a 3-year run there, 11 to 12 and 13. Their last World Series title was 1984. For the record, I was born in 1985. But the Seattle Mariners have the biggest one of all. They have never played in or won a World Series. They are on the verge of their first ALCS since 2001, and potentially the 4th ever if they can get there. But they've got to get past Tariff Skubal and get past this entire Tigers team. The game happening tonight. I'm recording this earlier in the day, earlier in the afternoon, before that first pitch, 8 o'clock Eastern. But this is like, and I'll talk about this from the Brewers' perspective as well. No one really respects Seattle. It's like, oh, it's cute. It's Pacific Northwest. It's on the West Coast, way up there. It's not LA. It's not the Yankees. It's not the Rangers. It's not Boston. Well, you know what? Now's your chance. Show up. Pull it out. Bring everything together. Do whatever you got to do. Manifest it. But Seattle, this is your chance. You kind of look. You got Suarez in there. You went out and got Naylor at the trade deadline. You have a solid pitching staff. But at some point, kind of the Aaron Judge thing, you don't get these chances don't come across all the time. You've got to find a way to max it. Maximize every effort. You're going to play against good teams. You're going to get Skubal. You've already seen him once in the series. He pitched really, really well. He's been dominant all year. But you've just got to find ways to scratch through. Take pitches, work the count, get him out of the game, and then attack that Detroit bullpen. But you've got to put everything on the line. All hands on deck. You win today. Don't worry about the ALCS. Who's going to pitch game 1? You don't get there if you don't win today. So you just need to focus in, drive it in. Who's going to be that hero outside of Cal Raleigh on that entire team? J.P. Crawford's been playing pretty well. But who's going to deliver with that big at-bat against Skubal? Who's going to drive it? Well, it wasn't a sac fly, stolen base, but how do the Mariners scratch together and get it done? The Tigers, the pressure's kind of off of you. It would have been on you earlier in the year because you had a dominant league. You're the first to 40 and 50, and I think maybe almost 60 wins in the AL and in all of baseball. And you had a huge drop off. You lost the division, and that kind of took the pressure off of you. Just go out there and do your business. You're in the playoffs, but the pressure's right now on the Mariners because of that, playoff drought, playoff lack of success, and just the being that by having all that accolades all year long and having the attention on Seattle, it's time for you to deliver. If I was a betting man, I'm going to send the Tigers behind Skubal, take that game, take game 5, and we get a Tigers Blue Jays ALCS. And at that point, I think the Blue Jays just have more than enough. Outside of Skubal, it's one guy, but I think the Blue Jays just have the lineup. We're going to see Toronto as representing the American League in the playoffs. Before the playoffs started, my last episode, I picked Seattle versus LA to make in the World Series. But right now, the way it's setting up with Skubal in Game 5, it just seems very, very difficult for the Mariners to be able to get over that hump. Having to face an ace like that twice, who just is absolute filthy, presents problems. And they kind of blew a chance in Detroit to win one of those two and to just get themselves on. If it was Mariners, Blue Jays, I would take the Mariners. But it's just my pick now. I think the way of feeling Tigers behind Skubal and that momentum. Tigers, Blue Jays get back and get back to the World Series for the first time since 1993. Moving over to the senior circuit, let's talk about the Phillies. I mean, you win the American League and win the National League East in pretty convincing fashion. The Braves and Mets were not really challengers at all, much less the Marlins or the Nationals. You kind of had it all. The Zach Wheeler injury really derailed things, I believe. But kind of look at the run over. Pending free agents right now, as of October 10th. Alex Schwarber, who's going to rake in some serious money. JT Realmuto behind the plate. Max Kepler, Ranger Suarez, David Robertson, Jordan Romano, Walker Buehler. Not really much of a loss, but it's potential he might come back even just with the Phillies on a lower deal. Jose Alvarado, who had the PED suspension, couldn't pitch in the playoffs. Club option. Did they bring him back to the bullpen? He actually pitches pretty well in the bullpen. Harrison Bader, it's a mutual team option and his option. So see, he's an okay outfielder and played pretty well. Is that too much to overcome? We still have Bryce Harper, Aaron Nola, Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, Johan Duran, Trey Turner, Alex Braun, Castellanos. These are the core of the team, but it's another year. We've seen lack of delivery in the playoffs, whether it was the Padres a couple of years ago and they just couldn't get over the hump, or in the World Series. Where's that? And losing a couple of those key players, is that really going to have an impact? Does Kyle Silver want to go back, or she's going to cash in? Does he really love being in Philly, or is she going to cash in big time money? Castellanos is getting older. He's been pulled from being a normal rotation in the outfield. There's a lot of questions there with the Phillies. I think the Braves bounce back next year. The Mets are going to do something in the offseason, but hey, it's the Mets. Either it's all in or they stink. The Marlins have been looking better. So the National League East isn't going to be as dominant as it has been in the past few years. Where do the Phillies go from here after that painful loss in the playoffs against the Dodgers? Same questions I had coming in my last episode. Cubs, PCA, Kyle Tucker, can they deliver on the lights of Bryce for the Cubs? PCA he's shown up in Chicago. He got that 2-run single in Game 3 that kind of ignited the Cubs into that 4-run first, and they held on to win 4-3. Had another big at bat in Game 4. Kyle Tucker hit a home run, kind of looked better at the plate. The two of them, if they can keep going, Shizaki out there, and obviously we mentioned the infield. Dansby Swanson has been okay. Matt Shaw's got a hit. He's got a lot of walks. Michael Busch is playing well. So the Cubs are there. If they're pitching and their bullpen can hold on, they're a very good baseball team. But that Game 5 up in Milwaukee is going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Dodgers, the question I had initially, same thing here. Can they repeat? Yamamoto, Glasnow, Snell, Ohtani, Kershaw, Sheehan, a couple of guys out of bullpen, a couple of guys in the rotation. Sasaki came back. He's been pitching like that as a closer. The Dodgers have the pitching. If that offense, that veteran offense between Freeman, Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Max Muncy, Will Smith, they're still the team to beat. They're peaking. They're getting better at the right time, which is scary for either the Cubs or the Brewers, whoever I have to face, much less anybody in Nashville in the American League in the World Series. That team is showing that they have that moxie. That's the reason why they spent all that money. Their payroll might be huge, but at least they're essentially getting dividends or they're getting return on that investment, unlike the Mets. And what I said about the Brewers, they put together an amazing regular season. Best record in baseball. Number 1 overall seed in the playoffs. Best regular season in Brewers franchise history. Can they finally win a playoff series? Haven't won a playoff series since 2018 in a walk-off Game 5 versus the Diamondbacks. They were up 2-0, went to Arizona, got beat twice, came back home for Game 5. Hopefully that same symmetry applies, and the Brewers can find a way to win Game 5 and move on. The last World Series the Brewers went to was in the American League in 1982, and they lost to the Cardinals. There's a lot of pain when it comes to Brewers in the playoffs. All those division titles, the playoff appearances don't mean a dang thing. You can't win a playoff series. You can't even advance out of the first, whether it's the wild card round, the DLS. They took the Dodgers to Game 7, the NLCS in 2018. They lost, and they were at home. It was in Milwaukee. When is the team going to break through? When is things going to look right? Game 1 and Game 2 in Milwaukee, the Brewers absolutely crushed the Cubs. Looked dominant in every fashion. They fought back in Game 3, and they looked absolutely exhausted, lost, abandoned in Game 4. Which Brewers team will show up in Game 5 in Milwaukee versus the Cubs? It's probably going to be a bullpen game for the Brewers, all hands on deck. And Shohei is going to take the mound for the Cubs. And it's now or never, because the season is going to seem hollow and lost. Nobody's going to remember that you had the best record in baseball. Nobody's going to remember that you had 97 wins, a franchise record. All they're going to remember is that you were eliminated in the first round of the playoffs for you as the number 1 overall seed by your hated rival, who's being managed by your former manager, whose dad worked for the Brewers for many, many years, who grew up in Wisconsin, who played for the Brewers. And all that's just going to hang and hang and hang. It's going to be Yelich's time. He's getting older. The pieces are only in play for so long. Every team's different. You've got to find a way to get it done. Saturday could be one of the best days in Brewers baseball history, or might be the most painful Brewers exit. And I'm saying this after last year's loss to the Mets, the most painful Brewers exit of all time in the playoffs because of everything the way it's set up. Bryce Terang and Sal Frelick have been invisible offensively. Contreras played, done well. Yelich, not delivering the clutch. I don't like him in the leadoff spot either. Churio hit really well. Andrew Vaughn had a couple great hits in Game 1 and Game 2. The rest of that lineup, though, Caleb Durbin, I'm going to need something from you. Ortiz, going to need something from you. You guys are going to have to start delivering. Blake Perkins, going to need to hit. Whether it's you or Isaac Collins, I need somebody to get some clutch hits with running scoring position. The Brewers were 0 for 12 in Game 4. It's time. Either it's all or everything's just been a sham and a waste and painful loss of more of, hey, we're never going to get it done. So, hey, Uke, if you're up there and you're listening, please send some positive vibes to Milwaukee, because the Cubs are a very, very good baseball team. They smell blood, and the Brewers need something to pick them up and just get over the top in advance. Brewers versus Dodgers. Hey, Cubs versus Dodgers. If you're playing free, you have nothing to lose because the Dodgers are so good, but you have to get over this hump. Brewers hopefully really do on Saturday night. And you look at, like I talked about in the American League, last World Series for remaining squads, Dodgers are the reigning champs. Cubs won in 2016. Brewers have never won a World Series. The last time they went to one was 1982. The last time they went to a championship series was in 2018 when they played the Dodgers in 7 games. So can they deliver? Can they get through it? Can they figure it out? I still, no matter what happens, if the Brewers beat the Cubs beat the Brewers in Game 5, the Dodgers are going to go. That team is just peaking at the right time. That pitching is the pitching depth, and the way they can get length out of any of the starters out of the bullpen is tremendous, much less that lineup. If it's the Dodgers versus the Mariners, that'll be a fun World Series. Dodgers, Tigers, Dodgers will sweep them. Dodgers, Blue Jays, I think could go 6 games, but the Dodgers will win. The only team in the playoffs right now that I think has the pitching to help compete in a full 7-game series from the American League would be the Mariners because they have the bullpen and they have the rotation to help balance it. The Blue Jays don't have the bullpen to keep going. They have some starters, but that bullpen's not going to be able to stand it. And the Tigers started pitching the bullpen. They're going to have to win an offense versus the Dodgers, and I don't see that happening. The Brewers have the pitching. The Cubs have a pretty good, a nice solid bullpen. They have the offense. So the Brewers and Cubs give the Dodgers a much better competition, and they face them much more often. They understand what they're getting themselves into, over the past few years than the Tigers, the Mariners, or the Blue Jays. But we'll see what happens once we get through the championship series. We'll have another episode to sort of recap and then look at the World Series itself. But it'll be very tense Saturday night and tense Friday night across the baseball scope in those 2 Game 5s in their respective division series. One thing, like we talked about in the last episode about the ABS, the automated ball strike challenge system. The action behind home plate between, even just watching the Brewers Cubs series, both sides, and playoffs in general, there have been some terrible, terrible calls by the umpires. Balls that are outside. Not, if you're going to call a bad pitch, you're going to call a zone, it's going to make it at least, consistent for both teams and for the entire game. Not where the first inning is different from the second, different from the third, different from both teams who get to bat. We've seen a widespread, and it's been absolutely horrible. There needs to be some sort of sense of accountability. Pitchers got to know what the strike zone is. And if they're throwing that pitch, it's got to be a strike. In the first inning, on the first pitch, 9th inning to the last pitch, regardless of who's out there on the bump, regardless of what team it is, the strike zone needs to be the same because that dictates what the hitters are looking at. It dictates what the catchers are setting up. It dictates what the pitchers are dealing with. And if it changes game to game, inning to inning, pitch to pitch, there's a problem. And that adds way too many variables and potentially weighs situations in favor of one team over another. The most egregious is when it's a 1-1 count and that pitch is either a strike or a ball. That obviously going to dictate the rest of the at-bat. 1-1 is that big, you talk to most managers and pitching coaches, hitting coaches, 1-1 is where the entire at-bat really changes. If it's a ball and it's called a strike, now it's 1-2, the batter's pissed, and the pitcher now knows I can throw a bat anywhere near the plate, and he's going to be swinging. So now I have the mental advantage, and I'm just going to throw something near the plate. He's going to swing and try to be defensive, and I'm going to get a strikeout. Now, if it's a strike, but it's called a ball, and now it's 2-1, that hitter knows that next pitch, I'm going to get one piping right down the middle, and I'm going to get a green light to tap. And that pitcher now is frustrated. The catcher is frustrated, and they know they have to throw a strike, and that batter's going to wait for it, and it's going to be pay. That's where you sort of have to be very, very fine-tuned. 3-1, and potentially walking a guy, you're now mentally frustrated, and it's just falling out of control. That 1-1 count, and if it's a called ball one way or the other, and it's not the right call, there are some serious things that umpires can do to really dictate and change that bat and change the ball game. So the ABS hopefully will help solve for that going forward, because right now in the playoffs, we're seeing some painful at-bats for some very egregious calls, balls and strikes going the opposite direction. And having that box there, you can definitely see one is one and one is the other, but it is a bad thing. Keeping with our building our World Baseball Classic Team USA and helping out Mark DeRosa try to get Team America back in there, winning another World Baseball Classic after losing the final in the last tournament to Japan and winning the one before that. We're going to get 19 and 20 on our team today. This is who I'd want on the team. I do know that Zach Wheeler is now out for the year, probably not going to pitch, but we put him in there so long ago, staying on my team. We had Aaron Judge and Paul Skeene because they were already added to the squad. Zach Wheeler, Kyle Schwarber, Mookie Betts, Josh Hader, Bobby Witt Jr. We announced him before he was even picked by Mark DeRosa. We were ahead of the game on that. Griffin Jacks, Nolan Arenado, Jason Adam. I know Jason Adams hurt, probably won't be able to pitch, but at the time, tremendous relief pitcher, solid middle relief, old guy. I would have loved to have him in that, but I know he won't be pitching in real life because that injury recovery will run him through, and I'm sure the team will not allow him to be playing in a Team USA World Baseball Classic spectacle and not getting ready to pitch with the Padres. Cal Raleigh, we had him on the squad before he was officially announced in real life. Mason Miller from the Padres, Riley Green, Tarek Skubal, Pete Alonso, Tyler Rogers, Corbin Carroll, Garrett Crochet, Bryce Terang of the Brewers, Logan Webb of the Giants. Those are all the previous guys we've named the roster. If you want to hear why, look at previous episodes through Spinball Sports YouTube channel or listening to this podcast through all podcast platforms. Today, we are going to add two more. I'm going to add first baseman Freddie Freeman. He can be your DH, can play first base. Between him with Pete Alonso, give you a Schwarber day off, but Schwarber in right field gives lousy ways to mix and match. But Freddie Freeman is one of the best pure hitters in all of baseball. And putting him in that lineup, I don't care where you pencil him in, he will be lethal. And it gives you a lot of roster flexibility, especially in a tournament in March where guys are still in spring training mode. You want to ramp up at bats, you want to ramp up approaches and playing time. You put Alonso at the DH spot, let Freddie play first, with Schwarber in right field, or give Schwarber a day off, have Freddie play first, and have Alonso DH. Rotate the three of them. I think those are all very interchangeable players to give them all some power bats in the lineup. Or, hey, you need a big bat off the bench late in the ball game. You can pull out one of those three and plug him in at one of those two spots and be very flexible. You need that big thunder. And then bullpen-wise, you're going to need a lot of great relief pitchers. Starter pitchers aren't going to be fully stretched out. How do you get guys who can be middle relief and closers? I'm going with Jeff Hoffman of the Blue Jays. His last 3 years, 2 with the Phillies and 1 with the Blue Jays, has been very, very good. 23 through 2025, 44 saves, 32 holds, 242 strikeouts, and 182 and 2/3 innings pitched. His K to walk the last 3 years. 2023 was 3.6 Ks to walk. 2024 was 5.6 Ks to walk. And 2025 is 3.1 Ks to walk. I mean, if he gets strikeouts, he attacks the hitters. He's not walking guys to get you on base very often. And that's a solid middle relief, late relief guy you want, especially in a big time tournament like this against elite hitters. Some guy can come in there and get you 2 outs or 3 outs without hesitating, without blinking. Those two I'm adding, so that gives us 19 and 20 on the squad. We got 6 more additions, 3 more segments to get to the full 26 for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic in 2026. I'm not really going to hit much of a power poll. We're kind of in the playoff mode. We'll sort of address at the very end. As we ended up going into the playoffs, it was Brewers, Phillies, Blue Jays, Dodgers, Mariners, Yankees, Cubs, Padres, Red Sox, and Guardians, in my opinion. It's kind of, I would make some significant changes, but I would say right now, the Dodgers are the best team in baseball, the way they're playing. They can win big, they can win close. That pitching staff is starting to take itself out. Having all those starters is paying dividends right now in the playoffs, and we'll see if it continues in the NLCS versus whoever they might play, the Brewers or the Cubs. Hopefully, the Brewers. When it comes to bets, I got some managerial decisions. Obviously, you're probably not going to get good odds on the Dodgers winning any game, much less being the World Series favorite. But if you're going to do it very, very quickly. It's always a safe bet to go with an Ohtani home run bet, anytime home run. Strikeouts, keep that number in mind. Especially if you're going with a starting pitcher, there's going to be a lot of quick polls for starting pitchers in the playoffs. So if there's a starting pitcher who has a strikeout total of 6.5, 7.5, I would feel maybe toward the 6.5, but anything higher than that, you're running risk of them if they get shelled early or pitch counts up, especially early in the series. It's game 1 or game 2, and they get on a couple of runs, they can get pulled. You might not get that 7 or 8 or 9 strikeouts. So be mindful of the strikeout totals. Look at bats. There's going to be a lot more bullpen action, and starting pitchers don't, especially in the middle of the series, like games 4, 5, and 6. You might not have starters going as deep, but you might have a lot of bullpen games in there. Even once in a while, just plug a bullpen game in. So don't just look at the starting pitcher when it comes to, I got over under 1 hit or over under 2 hits. Just looking at those productions or home run numbers. They had great success against the starting pitcher. Or who is this guy pitching in the first inning? I'm not going to do a bet because it's a relief pitcher. I haven't faced him at all. Well, they might bring in the opener and then have the starting pitcher come in the second inning, and you miss that opportunity. You might get one rotation through or so. Your regular season mentality of betting for bats and hits and stolen bases, chaos happens in the playoffs. There's a lot more relief pitchers, a lot more situational ball. Sometimes they're butting the regular season. They might be punting in the playoffs to get guys over late in the ballgame. So you might lose that on a hit, but you might get on base and score a run. So things happen. It's a lot tougher to bet because you're going to get a lot more crazy scenarios and random one-offs, but be mindful, obviously be responsible. But if you're going to bet a World Series, take the Dodgers right now. You might have some odds while they're still in the NL and ALCSs. But if you get anything tougher than that, it's gonna be pretty. You're probably not gonna get the greatest odds either. That's where you might want to hold off on that and maybe go against the grain, or just worry about single game bets and say, hey, I'm gonna pick them to win this game individually, money line, or cover the 1.5 spread. Don't worry about picking them to win the series, because you're probably not gonna get the greatest return on that, because it was not very good to start the season way back in March, and it's probably not going to get much better now they are in that Final Four here in October. Well, hey, playoff baseball is crazy. Playoff baseball leads to a lot of heroes. Who will be the hero this year? Will the Dodgers be the first team to repeat in a long, long time? We're going to find out. Are they beatable? Yes. Do they have tons of depth? Yes. But I think that their best matchup in a World Series, top to bottom, would be the Mariners. It would create early starts on the West Coast, and exposure for West Coast games on the East Coast for everyone here in Florida, New York, wherever. But it would be an experience. If it's Toronto and LA, that actually might help the Blue Jays in one sense of the travel, because then that flight too, it creates an experience. The Dodgers have to make that trip. Obviously, the Blue Jays travel too, but they have to at least go somewhere else. If it's in Seattle, they're just flying up to Washington. That road trip is easy for both teams. You're not going to have much travel fatigue for both squads. Travel fatigue would come into play if Toronto wins the American League, gets the World Series, and you potentially have a Dodgers, Blue Jays. If it's Toronto, Chicago, Toronto, Milwaukee, easy travel. Milwaukee, Chicago to Seattle, Milwaukee, Chicago to Detroit, obviously the real easy. If it was Milwaukee, Detroit, or Milwaukee or Chicago and Detroit, I think ratings would tank. The ratings dream at this point would be Blue Jays, Dodgers, because you have all Canada. Excuse me. I'm already choking like the Brewers in Game 4. But that TV execs, this is also the thing. Like, who's going to get the biggest pump? How are we going to get the most draw? We don't have New York in the market right now. We don't have Boston in the market from the American League standpoint. Houston's out of it. So Toronto, from a team execs, and a network executive, Fox, they would love to have all Canada. TSN obviously would get down, but it would give a good exposure, East Coast, West Coast, relatively, and it would have all of Canada and all of the United States hate watching on the Dodgers, hoping for the Blue Jays. As painful as it says, if it was Brewers, Tigers, I got a feeling the ratings numbers would be very, very low, even though people would love to have the small markets, either it's Brewers, Detroit, or Brewers, Seattle, or even Brewers, Toronto. I think people will still watch. The numbers won't be added records because it won't be like LA, New York, like it was last year. But people will watch because it is small market Milwaukee or somebody else. If it's Chicago, just turn your TV off. Go, ugh. But hey, if it's the Cubs versus the Blue Jays or Cubs versus the Mariners, Cubs have a huge fan base, and those ratings will be pretty solid. I think right now Fox is kind of open in that it's Chicago, LA, because they know at least one of those two teams will be locked in for the World Series and providing a nationwide fan base to add in ratings boost. But we'll see what happens. I'm going to say it right now. Brewers beat the Cubs. Mariners beat the Tigers. Mariners beat the Mariners Blue Jays will be fun. Dodgers Brewers will be a lot of fun. And we'll get back to you with those series, and we'll have a World Series conversation ourselves next time we meet up here on the Power Rally podcast. But until then, hit us up on SpinableSports.com. Hit us up on Spinable Sports YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter/X at Power Alley Pod. You can also follow me, Fresh, on Twitter/X at SS_2Fresh. I'm also the co-host of our flagship podcast, The Irrational Confidence Podcast. You can find that on Twitter/X at IR Confidence Pod. Also, SpinableSports.com, Spinable Sports YouTube channel, and on Twitter/X at Spinable Sports. Hey, love playoff baseball. October baseball is beautiful. Heroes are being made left and right. Can't wait to get through the series. Hopefully the Brewers can find a way to get themselves, take on the Dodgers in the championship series, but we'll find out here soon enough. And until next time, we'll talk to y'all later here from the clubhouse. Bye, y'all.